Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a little bit different of a video. I'm going to be going through and explaining the generation labels like baby boomer, generation X, generation Y, Z. That way you can figure out which one you are, because I feel like recently there's been confusion amongst people my generation and younger, whether they're Generation Y or Generation Z. So I just thought this would be a good video to do. It's interesting to me. I've looked it up before. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. So if that sounds interesting, stick around. Please take a moment, hit that subscribe button down below. And yeah, we're going to get into it. So I am looking at a website right now. This is the Generation Guide. It's forhooks.com, the Generation Guide, Millennials, Gen X, Y, Z, and Baby Boomers. I'll leave the link down below. They've got a very good graph chart on here and some other information, but I'm just going to be pulling from the chart. They have, like I said, a whole website that goes into more details on the different groups, and this is, I think, based out of the UK because they include the percentage in the UK workforce of each group. And I'm sure that these are probably pretty similar numbers to the US if we were to go and look up the percentages of each of these generations. They might actually be worse because millennials have a label of being lazy. Not to say that there's not, I'm a millennial, so don't think I'm just talking crap, but so these numbers are probably close. I would assume that they're close to the US numbers, but just so you know, I'm not reading US statistics. These are UK numbers. But okay, we're going to get into it. Maturists. These are pre-1945. I'm just going to read all of them, even though you're probably only here for the later ones. Formative experiences, a Second World War, rationing, fixed gender roles, rock and roll, nuclear families, defined gender roles, particularly for women. So this was during the period when you had stay-at-home wives, like the women, 1950s, classic 1950s imagery comes to mind where the woman's got her dress, full hair and makeup, and she's vacuuming. Like that was very classic 1950s. The woman stayed at home. The man went to work. The woman took care of the kids, cooked, cleaned. If they had more money, she would have a housekeeper, but she still didn't work, stayed at home, that sort of situation. The percentage in the UK workforce right now is 3%, and that because those people are at retirement age. So unless they're not able to retire or working part-time, they're not going to be in the workforce. Aspiration was home ownership. At that time, it was very important for men to get married, start a family, buy a home, buy a car. I remember hearing about, in the 50s, getting a washer and dryer in your home was a big deal. And then later on, the invention of the microwave came along, and then, the TV set, and, when people got their first television sets was a big deal because prior to that, people had radios. Attitude toward technology largely disengaged because, like I said, during the 50s, the television was black and white, had just come out. A lot of people in the early 50s and even mid 50s didn't have TVs in their home. That was a luxury item that people upper middle class had. So not everybody had a television set in their home. That wasn't a standard until mid to late 50s. Attitude toward career. Jobs are for life. So you found a job that you could sustain your family and you stayed there. You didn't bounce from one job to the next, to the next, to the next. You tried to work up into that job, and however high you got, you were content with it. You stayed there, you retired, and that was it. Signature product was the automobile. Like I said, cars were becoming mainstream. They were a little more affordable, and I think it was the goal for every family to have a vehicle. People didn't have multiple vehicles. Families usually had one car. Wealthier families had two, but communication media, letters. There was the telephone, but again, you're talking late 40s, early 50s. It was not a luxury. That was a luxury item. It wasn't a necessity item. Communication preference was face to face, and preference when making financial decisions, you went to the bank. You talked to the person at the bank. You didn't do anything over the phone. The computer didn't exist. So forth. Okay. Then we move into the baby boomers, which is 1945 to 1960. Cold War, post-war boom. So you had all of these men coming back from World War II, hence the baby boom. All these men are coming home. Obviously, they've been gone. Things happen. So, hence the term baby boomer. The swinging 60s, Apollo moon landings, youth culture, Woodstock, family-oriented, rise of the teenager. Percentage in the UK workforce, 33%. And I'll have to look and see when this was generated because I don't know how current these statistics are, but I'm sure obviously this was accurate when this was published. Aspiration was job security. So you had a more flux of people, especially coming back from the war. People wanted to have jobs. I think we were experiencing, I think there was more of this happening after, not World War II, but Vietnam, where you had a lot of the soldiers coming back and they were out of work. I don't really remember hearing this so much with the World War II vets, but I'm sure it was an issue. I mean, obviously, again, you have a flux of people. The industrial, factory work was taking off more. Attitude toward technology, early information technology, IT adapters. So I think in the 60s, again, more people, I wouldn't say everybody, but majority of the population at this point in the 60s had televisions. I'd have to look up to see when the microwave was invented, but people had phones. The 60s and 70s, people were getting, the longer phone cords where it was 10 feet. I mean, it really wasn't 10 feet, but it was the gigantically long phone cord. People were starting to get more than one line in their home. Attitude toward career, organizational careers are defined by employees. Signature product, the television. Like I said, this is becoming more mainstream at this point. Communication, media was the telephone. Like I said, everybody had phones in their homes. We were past that point where you picked up and you spoke to the operator and they had to, they had the switchboard and they had to connect you. We were getting past that point. Communication was still face-to-face, telephone. They say email if required, but that wouldn't have been in the 60s. But the baby boomers were starting to do more email as we got into the internet. So we're not necessarily talking about the 60s per se, but because this is the group of people that came from that gap, but because they entered into the technological age, with the internet and all of that, this generation does use emails. Like my mom, is probably considered Generation X. My dad is a baby boomer. My dad was born in 58. My dad does do communication with email. He does text, he does call, but he does prefer to communicate face to face. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about things in that time period, but you got to think past that. This is when these people were born, not necessarily when they lived. And then preferences when making financial decisions, still face to face, but they do go online. So the maturists, like my grandmother, prefers not to do anything on the computer. Then we get into Generation X, which is 1961 to 1980. My mother was born in 62, I believe. My dad was born in 58. You had the end of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall fell in the 80s, Reagan administration, Thatcherism, Live Aid, introduction of first PC, early mobile technology, latchkey kids. My mom remembers being, in elementary school and going home by herself. And at that time period, when my mom was growing up, people left their doors unlocked. So, she was taught if somebody's following you home from school, run to a neighbor or go into somebody's house and lock the door, because generally people weren't locking their doors. 35% of these people make up the workforce. There's a work-life balance aspiration. Digital immigrants. So that's attitude towards technology. So we're getting into people that are more tech savvy. Not necessarily as tech savvy as the baby boomers, but are using technology more. So like I said, my mom is Generation X. She's right on the cusp between that and a baby boomer. My dad is a baby boomer. Personal computers are signature product. I remember when my parents bought their first PC. I learned how to type on an Apple II, which was the green screen computer. Communication media, email, text message. Communication preference is text messaging or email. I would say my mom likes doing email, not necessarily texting. And then does do online mostly when doing financial planning. Then we get into Generation Y, which is 1981 to 95. I was born in 84, so I am Generation Y, so I'm a millennial. And I feel like I'd have to do the math on the number range, but I feel like Generation Y is a large encompassing gap compared to like Generation X and the baby boomers. Maybe it's not, because baby boomers are considered 1945 to 60. I don't know. It just, from 1981 to 95 is a big gap as far as things that have happened culturally. And I mean, the same could be same for 1945 to 60, but anyway, so like I said, 81 to 95 are Generation Y. Millennials. So 9/11 happened, the PlayStation came out, social media, MySpace, then Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I personally don't understand Twitter. I have Twitter, but I don't fully understand Twitter. Invasion of Iraq, reality TV took off. Reality TV, I remember, started, I think the first season of The Real World was in 94, if memory serves, and I remember watching it. Google Earth and Glastonbury, let's see, 29% of Generation Y makes up the workforce, which is larger than Generation X at 35%, which I would say is probably an accurate in being that Generation Y is lower than Generation X, because I hear the comment a lot that millennials are lazy and don't want to work. So I can believe that statistic, at least, like I said, in the separation that X is greater than Y as far as percentage in the workforce, is probably accurate. Aspiration is freedom and flexibility. So like millennials, there's a bunch of millennial songs, we like wearing yoga pants, which I'm guilty of. I wear leggings all the time. Millennials don't want to work. They're lazy. They're not motivated. These are all like stereotypes, so if you're a millennial too, please don't think I'm being offensive. Attitude toward technology as a digital native. I don't know that, and I would think it was the people on the later end of Generation Y, because like I said, being born in 84, I learned how to type on an Apple II. I remember dial-up, where you would go on the internet and the phone would connect and it would ring and waiting for it to connect. And it was slower than molasses. People didn't have cell phones. Most of the kids I went to school with didn't get cell phones until senior year of high school, which we're talking 2003. So yeah, digital natives, I think, obviously the kids born in the early 90s that grew up a little bit later than I did, probably, because like I said, I remember video stores, VHS. My parents had a Beta machine. I remember when we got our first VCR, I was like 4. And that was a big deal that they had upgraded. And then I remember when my parents got the VCR rewinder. So I think it depends on which chunk of that span you were born on as far as digital natives. Because like I said, I don't understand Twitter at all. Attitude towards career. Digital entrepreneurs want to work online, want to work from home. Signature product is the tablet and smartphone. I can agree with that. Although I think maybe the Discman probably should be in there because we've kind of skipped. We went from personal computer to, I guess, television, computer, smartphone, but like the portable CD player was I remember being a big deal. Communication media, text, social media. And again, I think it depends on what you do and when exactly you were born, because I mean, I text a lot now, but years ago I didn't. I used the telephone. Communication preference, online or mobile. Yeah, I do everything over the phone. Preference when making financial decisions face to face. Yeah, I can say that. Okay, and then we're getting into Generation Z, which I've heard is labeled as the generation that's like asleep. They're like, born after 95. So we haven't made a cutoff yet. And I don't know what they're going to call because we've reached the end of the alphabet. So I don't know what the group after Z is going to be called, but it's anybody born after 95. So we don't have a cutoff. Economic downturn, global warming, global focus, mobile devices, energy crisis, Arab Spring, produce own media, cloud computing, WikiLeaks. The percentage of the UK workforce currently employed in either part-time jobs or apprenticeships. Probably. Aspiration, security, and sustainability. Attitude toward technology. Technoholics. I would say that's probably accurate. Attitude toward career. Career multitaskers will move seamlessly between organizations and pop-up businesses. So job hopping. And like my generation, they work with organizations, not for organizations. So apparently my generation doesn't want to be told what to do, which I've met a lot of lazy millennials, so I can attribute that. Signature product, Google Glass, nano computing, 3D printing, driverless cars, communication method, handheld, communication devices, hands-free, communication preference, FaceTime. I will say a lot of younger people FaceTiming. I FaceTime with my older daughter because she lives with my ex-husband. She FaceTimes her friends all the time. Preference when making financial decisions, solutions will be digitally cloud sourced. So that is a breakdown of the generation groups. Like I said, I will link this website down below. But yeah, like I said, I'm a millennial. I am not proud to be a millennial because of the negative connotations associated with my generation. And for a long time, I thought I was in Generation X. But like I said, the cutoff is 81 and I was born in 84. So that is what it is. But I feel like I said, these are large gaps. For some reason, I thought like the baby boomer group was smaller and Generation X was smaller. And there is conflicting information because like this is how this website has this mapped out. But I've read other sources where the birth range is different. So I will leave this link. I will leave this website down below so you can look on here and figure out how accurate it is. And like I said, I don't know who predetermines any of this information anyway. But yeah, I just thought this would be helpful. So if you are unsure which generation group you fall in, this hopefully will provide a little bit of clarity on that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this wasn't boring. Again, I'll leave the website down below. It's got some really good charts in here. And yeah, definitely go check it out. And hopefully I will see everybody in my next video. Bye, guys.